What's up, guys? Joker here, and I am joined once again by the deal man himself for TGW number 93. We're going to be talking about Ryzen 5's launch, about the G2A and Fiasco with Gearbox, and a whole bunch of other tech news for the week. What's going on with you, man? It's been a couple weeks since we got a chance to speak.
Yeah, it has been. How you doing? We've had a
What's up,
few minor
guys?
things go
Joker
on
here,
since
and I am
then,
joined
Ryzen
once
5.
again by...
And
Yeah.
thank you very much for having me back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, he was. You were geared up after the last show, wanting to come back on the next week right after, and I didn't. I ended up not doing a show last week. I think it's because of the Ryzen launch. I was doing a lot of testing and everything with that, and didn't end up doing a show last week because I kind of got that kind of late. It felt like, but yeah. No, that was the motherboard. That was the issue. I got the Ryzen stuff on time, but my motherboard was broken. The first motherboard I got, the MSI B350, was DOA, so I had to wait for another one. So I had to wait a couple days for that. So I was kind of behind by a couple days as a result of it.
But AMD sent you got another one pretty quickly, didn't you?
Yeah. It was the weekend, so I had to wait through the weekend basically. But then
Yeah.
on Monday they overnighted it, and I got it Tuesday, I think. So I started testing on Tuesday, and then I was busy for the rest of the week basically.
I had something similar actually happen on Ryzen 7. They sent me one of the EK water blocks liquid coolers,
Uh huh.
and it failed.
Oh, I have had a similar issue. I had the EK Predator 240 in my main system, and right around the time of Ryzen 7 launch, it died in my 6800K build, and I was just like, oh, it just stopped working. My CPU was getting like 99 degrees. I was like, what's happening? It's just dead.
Yeah. It didn't leak. It just stopped pumping.
Yep, that's what happened with mine. I believe it would stop. I could hear vibrations, but nothing was happening. Like it wasn't cooling at all. So I'm not exactly sure what failed on it, but I think it was the pump.
And it didn't help that it was the 7 launch, so I didn't have anything else at the time. I didn't have now I have several other coolers I could put on, but at the time that was the only one that would fit on the board they sent. So I was kind of like stuck until.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into tech pickups. I did have a couple of one thing of personal news and one thing of kind of channel news for people, to let people know. Usually you kind of do it on TGW is a good place for it. First one is VidMe. If you guys aren't familiar with VidMe, I started uploading over there. I linked to my channel down in the description. It's vid.me/Joker Productions. So if any of you guys are fans of that platform, you can now find all of my videos being uploaded over there too. They're not being uploaded earlier or behind a paywall or anything ridiculous like that. Everything just goes up generally at the same time as it does here on YouTube, or maybe just shortly after. So if anything, it maybe comes here first on YouTube by maybe an hour or so, but everything is also going up over there. And the second piece of news is that I'm going to be moving over the course of the next week or two. I'm going to be moving in with my girlfriend, so I'm going to be setting up a whole room over there as a new studio space. So I'm going to be doing moving vlogs surrounding that, so keep an eye out for that on the channel. Did you have any challenges or personals you wanted to share with the viewers, or do you want to get into the tech pickups?
I know that I'm behind on my 100,000 thank you video. I'll do a Q&A probably this weekend. I know, Joker, you did a really good job getting yours out when you hit 100,000, and I've been slack. So
Yeah, I was waiting
if any
for
of
it.
you have been wondering why that hasn't happened, it is on the list. I'll get to it.
Nice. Did you happen to get your notification yet to apply for your silver play button? I still haven't gotten mine yet.
Nope, have not.
Yeah, I still haven't got my notification yet, so I'm kind of waiting on that. That's some people do choose to wait until they get the play button. I don't think I'm going to do a play button unboxing because there's so many of them, but I already did the 100K thank you, so I'll probably wait till like 250,000, I think, before I do another milestone video like that. But all right, let's do tech pickups, and since you're the guest, you can go first. What do you got to share with the viewers as far as tech pickups are concerned?
What is there to talk about except for
Ryzen 5.
really? I mean, that's the topic this week is Ryzen 5, and I even brought a show and tell this time. Lordy, 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 Ryzen 5 is. Ryzen 7 is great for people like us, YouTubers who make a lot of content, need video rendering, video encoding. But for everyone else who doesn't need content creation as much, Ryzen 5 is the deal. And let's just say that we have competition. We have 8-thread and 12-thread processors at the previous 4-thread price. does nothing but benefit the end user, and I'm excited to see it because it's got great performance and it's great pricing and there's great motherboard choices. And
Now, I haven't had a chance to compare this yet, but what was your findings with the Ryzen 5 compared to the Ryzen 7? Was it much slower in terms of just gaming performance than Ryzen 7, or is it on par or slower, faster?
exactly the same. In fact,
That's what I would
when I
expect.
did when I didn't put the Ryzen 7 benchmarks because I didn't have every game tested at the same settings, and I
Yeah,
didn't want to put differing tests in.
of course.
In other words, RAM speeds were different, clock speeds were slightly different, and game settings and drivers were different. And this is an important point to note whenever and if you're ever looking, and I speak to the viewers here, if you're looking at benchmarks, it's worth asking or checking, were the test conditions between chips the same? Were the video driver versions the same? Because it's really easy to be sloppy if you're not careful. So for example, when I published my Ryzen 5 launch video, every benchmark, every game you see in there, the RAM speeds, the AMD graphics driver versions were all the same between each machine in each test. So I didn't use old results that I got months ago on different driver versions.
Yeah,
And the problem is the Ryzen 7 numbers that I had were done a month ago on different driver versions with slightly different setups. But I tested 1500X at 3.7, 1600 at 3.7, and just based on my own experience with Ryzen 7 at 3.7, games have virtually no difference in performance between 4, 6, or 8 cores, other than there were a couple where the minimums were better on the 6 core than the 4 core.
interesting. So I think that's going to definitely be appealing to gamers. You know, it's especially when you see the 1500X is what is that, 179 for the 1500X, I think.
189.
189 for the 1500X. So I haven't even had a chance to test the 1500X yet. I'm planning to do some content with it here soon. I pretty much focused on the 1600X initially, but it sounds like from what you're saying, I probably won't see too much variance there. But it'll be fun to put that in some budget builds, and that's I like having the options because I love looking at budget builds, and I know you like a deal as well. So when you're parting out a build, for the longest time, it's just been, well, you got to use Intel, or if someone really needs to save the money, then you might choose an AMD, 8320 or something. But it's going to be it's going to be slower and not as upgradable as something like Ryzen, which is not far behind at all from Intel's i5s and i7s in terms of performance, and much cheaper even down to quad cores.
That's true, although I have to admit, and I commented on this 2 weeks ago when I was on your show before,
Mm-hmm.
I built earlier this year, an FX 8300 based machine, and I did it partly to have something to benchmark against the upcoming Ryzen chip, since they had announced that everybody knew they were coming.
Yeah.
And the last time I had seriously looked at the FX series of chips was 5 years ago when they first launched in bulldozer trim in the 8100 series. And at the time I was deciding, do I buy an AMD FX or do I buy Sandy Bridge? And at the time I decided to buy the i5 2500K, because if you go back to that day, if you go back 5, 6 years ago, all the benchmarks, all the tests, nothing used 4 to 8 cores. There was no point back then. And so everybody from Anitech on down basically said, well, FX is a nice try, but it doesn't hold a candle to Sandy Bridge. But if you fast forward to today, while it's true that Sandy Bridge still does very well, that FX 8300 really is an amazing deal. Now, what's happened is the price of those chips has come down. I think they're currently $89. That's not bad. And with Ryzen out, there's going to be a bunch of people wanting to sell their FX-based systems. If you can pick up a used FX chip in the $50 price range, that might still be a deal.
Yeah, you probably can. I mean, I had I had two FX 8370 systems that were complete, and I parted out one of them, and one of them I kept and gave to my girlfriend because she just does regular web browsing and stuff. So she's got a really powerful web browsing PC. But the other one, I was like looking on eBay, and it's like people weren't even selling them for that much. So I ended up giving a Asus motherboard with the FX 8370 to one of my close friends that I've known online for years, and I gave it to him for $50, motherboard and CPU. So he got a good deal.
That is a good deal.
He got a good deal. I was like, I could put it on eBay for like not for maybe $100 for the pair, and then they're gonna take their cut on eBay. I was just like, I'd rather just give it to a friend who's gonna get good use out of it and give him a friend price.
And he's not going to give you hassles. I mean, you sell on eBay, and then you run into then you got to ship it, and then
Yep.
There's a number of things that I don't bother to sell just because it's more trouble than it's worth.
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, something you need to plug is the giveaway.
Absolutely, I was going to do that. We kind of got into the Ryzen 5 discussion a little earlier there because of what you're sharing. But yes, the Ryzen giveaway, we still got that going on. I put that down in the description too. And if you guys still haven't heard about the giveaway, we're giving away a 1700X, a MSI B350 Tomahawk motherboard from Wendell over at I almost called him Tech Deals, at Level 1 Techs. And then Tech Deals himself is putting in a MSI RX 480 4GB GPU. So there's going to be two winners. First winner will get the motherboard and CPU combo, and second drawing will get the MSI graphics card. So you guys still have time to register that. We've got 2 weeks until we announce the winners, which will be on April 27th. I'll be uploading a video here on my channel. I'm not sure if the other guys are going to put up dedicated videos, but we'll definitely contact the winners over email or social media, however we can get in touch with them. And we'll give them like 48 hours to respond or something. And if they don't respond, then we'll move on to the next person, so on and so forth. But
so be sure to follow the email that you register and sign up with.
Yep, for sure. And if for whatever reason the first place winner doesn't respond in 48 hours, then I guess the second place winner would get bumped into first place, and then we would draw another second place person. So for tech pickups, though, I just got one quick one. This is a Alxam USB charging base. So this actually can put up to 10 devices on it once. So I've got like my S7 here. Got my S6 right here. I've got a OnePlus X on the other side of the room, but I'm not going to go grab it right now. They sent this thing out to me. I hadn't had one of these yet, but I've been using it now for about a week. This thing is like super convenient. It has 10 charging hubs on the front, so you can put 10 USB devices on here at one time and charge them. And it does 2.4 volts, so you can do like your MacBook Pros, iPad, stuff like that. I'm dropping it all over the place. But I will definitely update the description here and put a link over to that to Amazon for you guys after the show is over. I forgot to do it before the show started, but I will put it down there. But that's really my only tech pickup besides a laptop, which is on the other side of the house. It's the VX Nitro from Acer. I think you just reviewed that, right? The black edition.
The VX15.
Yeah, is that okay? I think I did a video on that one. That's the $800 one or the $1,000 one.
It comes in both. It comes in 800 and 1,000, and I recommend the 1,000 personally. But that's just because I think it's worth the money for the features.
Mm-hmm.
The V15 Nitro is what, the $1,300 version?
Yeah, that's the one I've got now. I got the 15-inch. They had a 17-inch one also with the Tobii eye tracking, but I chose to get the 15-inch one from them because I think more people are going to try to stay as affordable on laptops. And the 17-inch I thought maybe might be a little bit bulky for some people. And I like 15-inch laptops. For 1080p, honestly, 15 inches is fine for me. For a laptop, I'd rather have the slimmer, lighter design and everything. And I don't really need Tobii eye tracking on a gaming laptop, personally.
I fully expect that the 15 inches outsell the 17 inches by 10 to 1.
Oh, yeah, I agree. That's like part of the reason why I'm just like, I always choose, whenever they show me them, I always take the more affordable option. I'm just like, no, send me the cheaper one. It's not about getting the most expensive toy. I mean, that's fun. But realistically, more people are going to buy the more affordable option.
So your new secondary channel you're starting soon is going to be called Joker Deals, right?
Yeah, you say tech, I say deals. Tech,
deals.
Yep. Yeah, might have to do Joker Deals with a Z on the end though, just to be because I got to be unique and original.
Sure.
All right, so we already started talking about Ryzen 5 a little bit. I don't know really if there's anything else we could say that's already been said. I mean, everyone's reviewed it. Most of the reviewers out there seemed really hyped up about Ryzen 5, a lot more than Ryzen 7. It seemed like a lot of people were quick to kind of bash it initially. But with Ryzen 5, it seems like everyone's kind of been excited about it. Even though it might be trailing behind i5s in most games by a few frames, you can't argue with what it's offering by having 6 cores and 12 threads versus just 4 cores from Intel.
I think one of the biggest problems with Ryzen 7's launch with some of the, it's not good enough, it doesn't hold up to i7, is that the comparison there, too many of the launch day reviews were only looking at the 1800X for $500 and didn't focus enough, in my opinion, on the 1700.
Couldn't agree more, because I think I was like the only tech channel that actually did the 1700 on launch day. Did you as well? Did you do the full lineup at launch?
I've slept since then.
So yeah, but no, I ended up getting a lot of attention on that video because I ended up being like one of the only people that actually covered it, and I did that because I thought it was the most interesting one. After I put it into my system, got it to the same clock speed as my 1800X, and the gaming performance was identical, virtually identical, within 1 or 2 frames in some cases. So I was just like, why is anyone going to go out and buy the 1800X if they can get a part that has a lower TDP, puts out less heat, and is like $180 cheaper? Like, why is anyone going to go buy an 1800X now unless they don't want to overclock?
And it comes with a cool RGB cooler.
Exactly.
Which they didn't send us.
No, they didn't, but we got it with the Ryzen 5 along with the Wraith Max, which I had mistakenly thought it was going to come with one of these CPUs. I said it in my initial unboxing, but no, it's not, and which is a shame. I don't think they're not supplying that cooler with anything. So
no, they sent us a cooler they aren't selling.
No, but it's a good cooler though. I put it on the 1600X. I ran IDA64 for close to 2 hours, and it reported back 81C, which is actually 61C with the 20-degree offset. So yeah, with a sort of a stock cooler, 60 degrees Celsius on IDA64 for an hour, over an hour, that's pretty good. Can't really complain about that.
Did you try putting the Wraith Spire cooler on your 1600X and running it at anything higher than stock?
I couldn't get an overclock on the board that I had on the MSI B350. I couldn't even put an extra 100 megahertz, and it didn't come down to temperatures. It just wasn't stable on that board. So for overclocking, I had to put it in my Better Red build, which is an X370 board from Gigabyte, and that has a water cooler in there. So, but I like I said, I don't think it was a temperature issue necessarily from the cooler. It was just the motherboards. And the B350 Tomahawk, I don't know about the other ones, but it doesn't seem like their BIOS versions are ready for production yet at all, like not even close. I've never had as many headaches with a motherboard as I did with that board. It started off where it took 34 seconds for me to boot into Windows. Sometimes the 3200 RAM timings it just wouldn't boot, and and then it would clear CMOS and reset the defaults, and it would do that constantly. And then eventually it would just work and work, without a hitch, until I would do a hardware change, and then it would reset again, and then I'd go through all the same issues over and over again. And it was just an absolute nightmare dealing with that motherboard, and then wouldn't overclock at all. And it was not a good time using that board. There was a beta BIOS that was released temporarily, 1.32 from MSI, which apparently addressed a few of these issues. But people on the forums then started reporting that it was bricking some of their motherboards. So then they ended up pulling that BIOS version. So I think they will get it ironed out over time. But right now, the BIOS versions on that board, I don't think are consumer ready. Unfortunately.
The joys of being an early adopter.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and especially when you're a reviewer and you're getting this hardware, before it's even available to the general public, you have absolutely no sources of information. You can't just go Google your way out of these problems. You have to email AMD, and hopefully they'll give you the answer you want. But it could be hard sometimes when you don't have the wealth of knowledge that's out there on the internet. Now that you can find that Ryzen 5 is out, people are buying them, consumers are getting them in their hands, and you'll be able to find a lot more information as time goes on. But
just keep in mind that all of the viewers right now are playing us the world's smallest violin. That we have struggles and challenges with our free pre-launch hardware.
Oh yeah, first world problems for reviewers that get stuff for free, and then you try complaining about like, oh, I'm so sorry for you got your free stuff and it's not working as intended. It's like, yeah, well, it's making my job harder. It's not like I'm getting this stuff to use for my personal use, to have a good time with it. I'm trying to produce content for people that are trying to make a purchase decision. And when the hardware gets in the way, it's very frustrating. And then you have AMD in your ear who's like, oh, we'd really like you to test in the B350 board because we think it's a good price to performance, proposition for people. And it's like, yeah, it is if it works. But this board ain't working.
You know, you mentioned the BIOS issues. I've been much happier with my ASUS BIOSes than I have been with the MSI. And this is not a direct knock on MSI because traditionally on the Intel side they've been fine, and they're a big company and I
Yeah.
trust they'll work the issues out. It's the early days. What X370 board did you get, by the way?
Gigabyte Gaming 5.
Um, I got sent the MSI titanium board, the X Power X370 board for my Ryzen 7 launch.
Right.
Nothing but BIOS headaches. In fact,
I heard
even
that.
today, it's had 2 more BIOS releases. It's on 1.3 now. If I want to run DDR4 3200, I kid you not, none of my 3200 kits will run at 3200 on that board unless you first boot at 2666. So when I install the RAM, I put it in 2666.
I had to do that too with this board. I had to.
Then you boot.
Yep.
Then
the
reboot into the BIOS, and then you can crank it up. But if you switch the RAM and then immediately go into the BIOS and set it to 3200, it won't post.
That's exactly what happened to me. I had to let it go through at least one boot on stock settings before I could go in and do the overclock. Otherwise, it would guarantee not to work.
The X370 version of the MSI also takes 30 seconds to even start posting, and it's going the num. Does your Tomahawk have the 2-digit LED display on the motherboard?
No, it does not. It just has a red LED that turns on and off.
That's a pain because on the X370, you know, they've got that diagnostic LED.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice because you know it's doing something because it's cycling through LED codes. But whenever you switch hardware, once it's set up and once you've got it initialized, it boots fairly quickly. But if I swap the RAM and then boot, it takes a long time of cycling codes.
Yep.
It almost feels like it's got development BIOS on there where it's analyzing the hardware you've installed to figure out how to handle it.
Well, I think what a lot of this is coming down to, as we were talking about this before the show, is that AMD didn't give the motherboard manufacturers a lot of time to get their motherboards ready for launch because they were kind of gun shy about providing the samples out to companies because it was a new architecture. It's one of their biggest, probably the biggest launch in their company's history, and you know, they were kind of gun shy about putting these processors out into the wild, afraid of leaks and things like that. And as a result, motherboard manufacturers only had a few weeks to a month to actually get things ready. So I think that's why some boards are having, you know, these issues and others not. Because in the past, I've used MSI boards that were rock solid. I've used an X99 board of theirs that was good. I used to use the Z77 M-Power, which was an amazing motherboard. And yeah, it's a shame that they have to have these issues. And then as far as the feature set, though, on this board, like you were saying with the LED, I was kind of underwhelmed with the features on there. It only had a few USB ports on the back. It didn't have a clear CMOS button. It did, the clear CMOS didn't even come with the jumper. It didn't even come with the jumper.
Yeah.
I was like, why would you not include the jumper? It says in the manual, it's like, if you need to clear CMOS, use the jumper. I'm like, what jumper? So you mean there's no jumper in here? The only way to clear it was to take the battery out or go find another motherboard that had a jumper and fish around for one and use that.
I went out and bought a ASUS Crosshair 6 X370 board, and after the most latest BIOS update, now on launch BIOS on it, it wouldn't run at DDR4 3200 either. But on the most recent BIOS, it will run 16 gig kits at 3200 without any problem. It will not run the 32 gig kits yet at 3200. I have fallen in love with the clear CMOS button on the back of that board. I've never really cared about such a feature. I mean, I've seen it on other boards before, but you know, to be blunt, the Intel boards have not seen a major change in 10 years, and so they've been fairly stable and predictable.
Yeah.
I've used that clear CMOS button on that ASUS Crosshair 6 board way too many times. That's my new favorite button.
I honestly, like, I could, before, you know, this B350 board, I can count on one hand how many times that I needed a clear CMOS button. Yeah. But with this board, it was like I needed it every 5 minutes.
It's worth noting, and I just want to say to anybody watching, understand that one of the reasons why we have to do that so often is because we're trying a lot of configurations you won't.
Yeah.
tested all of my RAM kits to find something that would work and to be able to say. So I probably ran 6 or 7 different RAM kits through it at different frequencies on both 1500X and 1600X. And I'm also overclocking and pushing the limit, and I tried multiple coolers. And so if it sounds, oh my gosh, that sounds like a headache, understand that I spent full time for like 4.5 days of just trying different configurations. Well, if you do that, you're going to have to clear the CMOS. You're going to end up putting in settings that don't work. And in my launch video for Ryzen 5, my advice was, if you use the included cooler, set it to 3.7 gigahertz, leave the voltages to auto, and rock on for a good time. If you go above that, you have to play tinkerer. You have to start messing with voltages. You have to start worrying about your cooling, and then you're going to set some setting where it won't boot or it won't post, and you have to clear the CMOS. All for, what, 3%, 5% more clock speed? If you want the easy solution, if you want I just want to buy it, I want to put it in, and I want this to not be too much hassle, that's why I said in that video, 3.7 is easy, 4.0 fixed is hard. Even if you buy the 1600X, which has a turbo of 4.0, understand there's a big difference between 4.0 turbo and 4.0 fixed across all 6 cores. 4.0 fixed would not run without a 240 millimeter liquid cooler.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I just want to toss that out for viewers thinking that this means that Ryzen is bad.
No, it's not. It's just some of the early motherboards.
It's early motherboards, and we are trying a lot of configurations so that we can tell you things like that rather than you having to figure it out.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
And it's a pain when they send Joker a board that has issues.
Yep, absolutely.
Anyway.
Yep, it gave me more issues than I care to count, and that's what led to me only having coverage for 1600X on launch day and no 1500X video, is because of the headaches that I had with that motherboard.
If I had any feedback to give to AMD for the future, send reviewers 2 motherboards.
Yep.
Seriously, it would first of all, it would deal with DOA issues, which happen. I mean, every company has. Even retail products, if you go order something from Amazon and Newegg, there's always a chance it will arrive and not work. Anytime you make $1 million of something, that happens. The second reason is it gives reviewers the ability to say, is this a problem with Ryzen in general, or is it this motherboard?
Yep.
That's my opinion. Because if they had sent you 2 different motherboards, you wouldn't have had that issue.
Oh, after I had got the DOA board, after they sent me the replacement, and I found that it was the same motherboard, I was like, God damn it! I was like, why couldn't you say the Gigabyte board? I know those are good. Send me one of the Gigabytes. Okay. I think we've done about a half hour on Ryzen 5, so I think we're gonna.
Ryzen 5 deserves it. Hey,
if
anybody is watching this and haven't yet decided to buy Ryzen 5, if you are in the market for a mainstream processor, there's Ryzen 5. Yep, and that's it. If you are at all considering buying one of these, don't. Sorry, Intel.
Get wrecked, mate.
All I will say is that doesn't make. And I brought this for a reason, and that's this is the 7600K. Intel's processors did not become bad just because Ryzen launched. They're still good. They still run programs. They're still fast. They're great.
There's just better options out there.
There's better deals. If you want the fastest single-threaded processor in the world, if you are a competitive gamer who wants that 200 frames per second because you're a professional, absolutely, you should be on i7 7700K at 5 gigahertz on a 280 millimeter liquid cooler. There is no question. But the problem with the i5 is that why do you buy an i5 7600K? You do it because you're compromising. You're trying to save money over an i7. Well, if you're compromising, then Ryzen 5 is the one you should buy.
Yep.
So it's either i7 7700K because you want the very best in the world, or buy a Ryzen 5 because it's a better value for the money. Sorry, moving on.
That's all right.
That's me and my deal brain.
No, it's all good. Yeah, deals all day. You're the deal man. I expected no less. All right, so let's talk about G2A and this issue that happened recently with Gearbox. I've kind of been following this since Total Biscuit posted his video on it, which came, right after all of this kind of went down. So to give people some backstory on this, G2A, which is an online key reseller where it's a marketplace really where anyone can go on there and use Steam keys, which is not used, I should say. It's just sell Steam keys, which in theory is a good idea, but it's been abused by a lot of people. People go out and they buy bulk orders of keys with stolen credit cards that they get on the dark web, and then they go on G2A and they sell them for a profit, and before they're found out, they've already sold off all their keys and they've made a few $1,000s, whatever it is, and then they moved on to the next thing. And G2A has known about this for a while, and they even run like a protection racket, which is the best way I can really explain it on their website, where they make people pay an additional fee for G2A Shield to be able to deal with fraudulent keys and stuff like that. And since then, it's gotten even worse, where they've now started rolling out a subscription service for the G2A Shield that is baked into the agreement of every single purchase, and you have to read through some fine print and unchecked boxes in order to have that unchecked. Otherwise, you're automatically added into their G2A Shield subscription on a monthly fee, which is just about as shady as you can get. So after Gearbox announced their deal to work with G2A on the release of Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition, Total Biscuit was just like, oh, that's it. You're working with G2A, who are basically crooks. That's it. I'm done. I'm never reviewing a Gearbox game again, which is good on them. I agree. And to Gearbox's end, I wouldn't really play much of their games anyway. They've gone downhill really bad. They've had issues in the past with Alien Colonial Marines, Duke Nukem, just to name a couple. But then this, partnering up with this company is pretty bad. So they basically issued a order to G2A and said, if you don't go out and meet our demands to, get rid of this protection service and all of these baked in charges on your website and make it very clear that all of your keys are valid and everything ahead of time and all on the up and up, then we are going to have to pull our deal with you. And they gave them 24 hours to do that, to basically change their entire website, which I think was kind of like a dummy move. It was just to say we have to give you some time, but we know you're not going to do it in 24 hours. So now they've pulled back from them, and they're no longer working with G2A. So that's just to kind of catch people up on everything that's going on with that. So what is your opinion on what's happened here with Gearbox and G2A?
Gearbox, as a developer and a publisher, Gearbox has the challenge of making multiple parties happy, and G2A both serves them and hurts them. As a side note, G2A, which is different than companies like Kingwin and other key resellers, it's worth noting that all of the keys that you can go buy on G2A, you can also go buy on eBay. And a lot of people don't think of this, but you can go buy game keys on eBay. Mm-hmm. And you have the same issues there that you do everywhere else, except that eBay is much more customer friendly, whereas you don't have to pay anything extra for guarantees. I mean, if you buy a key off of eBay and the key doesn't work, PayPal will refund your money. You're not going to have a problem. I first started selling on eBay back in 1997, back when the normal way you paid was money order. And literally you would get in the mail, I would get 5 to 10 money orders a week. I was selling computer parts on the side back then, Power Macs of all things. And people would send you $400, $500, $600 money orders with no recourse. Basically, you either sent the stuff or you didn't, and if you didn't, that's just how it worked. And it feels like the key reselling today is the eBay of the late 90s. Ultimately, if companies like G2A want to stay in business, they're probably going to have to find a way to combat the stolen key problem and to work with developers to ensure that developers' needs are met and maybe even work with a way to give the developers a cut of the sale, because there's a value in that. If you get given a gift of a product key, or you get a product key with, say, a video card purchase, and you already own the game, sites like G2A let you go sell the key that you don't need. That's a good thing.
It is. It's a good thing, especially when eBay actually does have rules against selling digital goods like that now. They have rules where you basically have to be selling a physical product on their website. Because I used to kind of work within a gray area of that. I used to sell Windows keys on there. That I would go buy bulk orders of Windows 8 keys, and I would sell them on eBay for $40 a piece, which was, a good deal for people buying them on eBay, because you'd pay $100 in the store for the disc and everything. But if eBay were to, to see the listings, they would pull them and put like a strike against your account and say, hey, you're not supposed to be selling digital only goods, even though everything was totally legit and people were getting their everything they bought immediately. As soon as they paid me, they got emailed a code right away.
Those listings are still up, by the way.
Oh yeah. Oh, no doubt. You can definitely still find them, but they do have rules against it. You're not supposed to. But that's why I say it's kind of a gray area. You can get away with it usually, but you're technically not supposed to on eBay.
I wasn't aware of that change. I don't sell on eBay regularly anymore. I mean, I one or two things here and there, but yeah. I wasn't aware of that change.
Yeah, no, it's been for at least a couple of years now. It was like 2 years ago when I was doing it. I was selling the Windows keys on there, and it was the rules then, and I'm pretty sure it's still the rules now.
The advice that I would give to G2A, if I could sit down with the boss or the owner or the CEO or whoever it is with G2A, what I would say to them is, at some point you're going to have to find a way to make peace with the developers and do business with them, because that's your long-term. Because it's a combative relationship is not beneficial, and it will give your customers peace of mind. I know I've had people comment in some of my videos saying, how come you have G2A links beneath your game performance videos? I don't make a judgment of it other than to say that I have bought keys through G2A, and I have not had a problem with any of the keys that I've bought. If I did, I'd say so. I would suggest that anybody considering buying a key from any key reseller, Kingwin, G2A, eBay, anything, be aware that there's always some risk that you may have a problem. Is the discount that you're getting enough to justify that? Or if you're getting a game that sells through Steam or Origin for $60, if you're getting it for $20, is that enough of a discount to risk a problem and having to go through the hassle of complaining to try to get a refund? If you're only buying one game, maybe it's not. But if you buy 10 games, think of how much money you save. If one out of the 10 games goes bad, you're still way ahead. But be aware that exists. And if you're not comfortable with it, then wait for Steam sales or wait for Origin sales.
Yeah,
buyer beware.
Yep, I've had those links on my videos in the past. This is like 3 years ago, because I have a partner program just like Amazon. I never had any contact directly with G2A, but anyone can go and register for an account where basically if you link to someone there, you'll get a small commission for anything that they buy. And very early on in my YouTube channel, when I didn't have any sponsors to work with or people sending me stuff, it was a good way to bring in, an extra $50 a month or so if I were to review a game and say, hey, if you want to buy this game cheaper, go buy it on G2A. But since the issues have come up back 2 years ago, I think it was, when everything came ahead and everyone found out what they were up to, I went back and pulled all those links. And I was just like, I'm not gonna back them anymore. But I understand why people still buy from them. I've bought from them in the past. Usually now I will buy on Steam. I was buying on CD keys even recently too, but now I've kind of shifted into buying on Steam or Origin or Uplay directly, because almost all of them have refund policies, which to me is more important than saving $10. I'd rather have the ability to get a full refund, which I can't do on CD keys, even though they do have some great prices on there.
Well, buyer beware. I mean, that's the big thing I would say is obviously, some of that is an issue between developers and key resellers. But I think that if the key resellers want to have a long-term business, they're going to have to find a way to care about the developers.
Absolutely.
Because, hey, if the developers don't make money, we're not going to keep getting games. I mean, well, okay, Electronic Arts will always be around.
Yep. Okay, let's get on to this next one, which was rather interesting. I saw this go up, what was it, a couple days ago, where an AMD Ryzen powered build that cost $1,500 that was using a Ryzen 7 1700 at stock speeds, which is 3.7 gigahertz. That's what oh no, was it 3.7? No, I'm sorry, it was 3 gigahertz. That's what it was, 3 gigahertz. I was thinking of the 1800X for a minute, where it beat the $5,500 Mac Pro in Photoshop benchmark, which is pretty awesome. I think the issue though here is that the Mac Pro has been around since 2013, which really says to me that Apple needs to go ahead and upgrade that hardware. But for people that own those PCs, it's really cool to see that a $1,500 PC is destroying the $5,500 trash can. And I call it the trash can not because it's a piece of garbage, but because it literally looks like a trash can. So,
well, we talked about Apple a little bit 2 weeks ago when we last did this, and yeah, that says more about Apple than it does about anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this was a pretty cool. I just wanted to kind of share this with people that this is what AMD Ryzen is doing now. It's really important, I think, for people that are doing this type of creation, Photoshop, video editing, anything like that it's really awesome for that stuff. Love it. All right.
If you are a content creator of any kind,
oh yeah,
and you care about your money, if you have to pay for your own gear, there's Ryzen 7 and there's nothing else.
Yep, and it's more than capable to handle games to the point where you're not going to be so bottlenecked that you can't run your games. And you said it pretty well in your Ryzen 5 review. I can't tell the difference between 180 and 220 frames, so what's the point? Absolutely true. All right, so this next one is about Platinum Games. They recently just released Bayonetta on the PC. Finally, I think it came out like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know what year it came out, but it's been out a while. Bayonetta was an awesome game. It's now on PC, so if you want to play it, check it out. I highly recommend it. But Platinum Games says they wish that all of their games could be on the PC, but it really comes down to the publisher, and their publisher they work with is Sega, which doesn't really surprise me. It seems like a lot of Japanese publishers are hesitant to release their games on the PC for whatever reason. Maybe they think there's not enough people playing on it. Maybe they're afraid of piracy. But it seems like they are starting to come around somewhat. I mean, we're now getting Bayonetta. Metal Gear Solid 5, when that came out, was on PC. So it's good to see these games starting to come to the PC because so many of them are good. Platinum Games are a great developer. They made the screenshot that's right here is from Vanquish. That is like one of my favorite third-person shooters of all time. Awesome game. I don't know if you ever played it. It was on the Xbox 360 and I think the PS3 also, but just an amazing game. Have you played any of the Platinum Games titles?
No, I'm not a big console guy. It's been a long time since I've played games on consoles. The only thing I would say about piracy and on the PC, you commented on this earlier when you mentioned about buying from Steam and Origin and refund policies. I think it's actually very important, and that's something they don't promote enough, is the fact that if you buy games directly from Origin, they've got their great game guarantee where you can play it for, I forget how many hours it is, but you can play a certain number of hours for a certain number of days, and if you go, man, this game just sucks, they'll give you your money back.
Yep, Origin is great about that, and their customer service is fast, like even faster than Steam in some regards. Like if you can get a live person on pretty much any time of day.
Which is ironic because it's EA, and we all know how much we love it.
Well, hey, that's one thing they're beating Steam in is they've got better customer service. I can't knock EA for that. They've got very good customer service on the Origin store.
Well, if you're worried about piracy, I think there's I am no expert, but when it comes to piracy, but you've got some people who will never pay for a game no matter what, and that's not lost sales. That's sales you never had to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got some guy in Bangladesh who has no money, he was never going to be a customer in the first place. So his downloading the game didn't actually take money. But a guy in Indiana or Florida or Europe who can afford the game is a lost customer if he pirates. But how many times have you gone out and bought a game on launch day and you paid $60 and you play the game for an hour and it's buggy and broken and it sucks and you don't like it and you go, and so you don't have to get burned very often. If more companies gave return policies, I think that people would be more willing, and they promoted it more, I think you'd get rid of at least some piracy by people willing to pony up the money and try it, rather than go, well, too many of these suck, so why pay for them?
Yep. And since we're on the topic of DRM, I'm going to move up the Mass Effect story
Sure.
by one, since we are already pretty much talking about DRM. Mass Effect Andromeda had been actually cracked. Pirates had cracked it. De novo DRM has been being cracked pretty much on every game that's coming out now. It's to the point where it's not really necessarily anti-piracy. It's like anti-tamper, where they're just kind of trying to delay pirates for a few weeks so that they don't get a big hit on launch day sales, which is understandable. But this game had already been cracked, and now they've gone ahead and they've re-DRM'd it on the latest patch, which is meant to fix some of the animations and the bugginess in the game. But so if anyone that's pirating it, if they were planning to keep the game updated, which usually you can do with pirated games, usually they'll put out the updates as they become available with the cracks and stuff in them. But it looks like now they won't be able to update it unless they crack this de novo DRM in the new patch, which if they crack the first one, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to crack this one.
The pirates' response to that is challenge accepted.
Exactly. That is exactly what I was just thinking. It's like, so we can't do this. We're going to do this now.
As long as people have control of their computers. Let me put it this way. PlayStation 3 was cracked. PlayStation 4 was cracked. If lockdown consoles can be cracked, there is nothing you can do as a game developer on an open PC platform that will ever be secure. And I would say to every PC developer out there, from EA and Origin on down, look at iTunes when the DRM on MP3s and music was lifted. There was virtually zero impact on music sales.
Yep.
People who were going to buy will buy. People who were not will not. I know there's a little bit of overlap in there, but when I was 20 years old and making $5 an hour, because that was minimum wage back then, I was broke. It would have taken me 2 days of work full time to buy a game. Did I download games that I shouldn't have when I was 20? Yes. Do I today? No. Because I can afford them, and so I'm okay to support the developers. I bought Mass Effect Andromeda on launch day because I love the Mass Effect series, and if nobody buys it, then they won't keep making new ones. That DRM, I think, is a huge waste of time. And I would tell the developers, if you make good products, if you put your effort and time into making great products, I think people will come out and throw money at you.
Yeah, and if anything, and there's actually been a number of studies done on piracy that showed that pirates will often spend more money on media consumption than non-pirates. Because these are the people that are so enthused about playing stuff, watching stuff, listening to stuff, that they're going to go out and pirate this stuff just so they can get access to it ahead of time. I know when I used to download movies off of torrents or off of whatever platform, Kazaa, Napster, whatever.
Sure.
More often than not, I was downloading it not because I didn't want to go to the movies or pay for it or go to Blockbuster and rent the DVD, but it was because they were up on these websites a month, sometimes 2 months before it was available to the general public. And it was just so cool to me that I could, watch a movie that was just in the theaters last week, or maybe is even still in theaters if it was like a DVD screener. It's like, oh, this movie's still in cinemas, but I got it right now. I could watch it right now, and I don't need to go to the movies for it. That was the cool thing to me. It wasn't that I wasn't spending the money, because I would have gladly spent the money. I go to the movies all the time. I probably go to movies 3-4 times a month. But that was the thing to me. It was just like, I just want to be able to watch it at home now rather than later. And that's what was so exciting about it to me.
It's interesting that you say that. You don't have an article on it, but have you heard about the fact that the movie studios are actually considering a home rental program for a much higher charge to allow you to see first-run movies that are actually in the theater at your home? They've been banding about two different dollar amounts, either $30 or $50 for a 48-hour rental.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
When a brand new, well, think about it. I've got 3 kids. To go take them to Boss Baby in the theater.
You're looking at like $50-$60.
Are you kidding? And then I got to deal with the popcorn and the drinks, and then I got to drive
another
there.
$40.
Do you know what it's like to take 3 small kids to the movies?
I don't want to know.
If you tell me
Oh, it'd be a
For
nightmare.
$30, we can have the movie instead at home. Well, okay, granted, I'm okay to wait, but because I'm not that impatient. But I give give people an easy way to legally consume your media, and I think most people will go, "Hey, if you don't treat me like a criminal, then I won't behave like one."
Yep. Yeah, and I think that would be absolutely fine. Usually, movies that are out in the cinema, you can usually go to hotels and watch them. Some hotels will have them. I know in Atlantic City, when I went there when I was like 14 or 15, and I got to the hotel room, I was like, oh my god, they got Empire, the new John Leguizamo movie, and it was still in the theaters. I was like, this is so cool. It's like $20 to rent. It's like, I don't care. Get it for me, mom, who has the money. But yeah, it's like, yeah, they should totally have that. If they have it in hotels, I don't know why they can't allow people to do it in their homes. Probably because they're afraid of people are just going to DVR it and put it up online, which will inevitably happen.
Which happens anyway.
Yep. It will, yeah, because they usually get released earlier in China, and then you see HD rips go up with have Chinese subtitles, or at least so I've heard. Anyway.
So regarding Mass Effect, putting the patch and the cracking issue aside, how about the graphical updates?
Yeah, I honestly I had lost interest because the story was like not there for me. The combat I think is the best in the series, but I have no attachment to the characters or the story in that game, so that's why I stopped playing it. I pretty much just use it to benchmark now. That's the only reason I didn't get a refund on it, is because I benchmark it. But I have not enjoyed the game, unfortunately.
Well, the article you linked does make a comment at the end. It said
Yeah.
the patch can't fix the game's writing and story.
No, it cannot. And that's what did it for me. Because if there's anything about BioWare games, they've always been about the writing and the story. And if they don't nail that, then I don't know if there's much reason to really play them. I mean, I love doing exploration and stuff like that. But if there's no, a compelling narrative driving me forward, then I'm going to lose interest very fast. That's why I really think the pinnacle of their work was Dragon Age Origins. And I think that was the best work they've ever done. And I just want them to get back to that.
There were interesting characters with interesting stories in Origins. And, the sad thing is in Mass Effect Andromeda, they spent so much time and energy on the Frostbite engine and bringing it up to DirectX 11 standards and making it pretty. Here's the funny thing. There was nothing wrong with Mass Effect 3's graphics.
Oh, no. That's fine.
Does Andromeda look better than Mass Effect 3? Yes. But a good-looking, boring game. All I can say is, here's the other problem I would say, not to make this a Mass Effect review, but I know what you're saying. In the original Mass Effect trilogy, when you're playing as Commander Shepard, you are fighting for Earth, you're fighting for home, your family, and your people. You are being invaded. You didn't ask for this fight or this adventure, and you've got the big bad that's coming, and it builds. The first one is the first big bad, and then you discover there's a bigger bad, and then a bigger bad, and then it's this big thing, which is great. The problem with Mass Effect Andromeda is it's essentially Origin Trail. I don't know if you remember Origin Trail from Origin.
Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail. I've got Origin on the brain.
I was actually just in a game store the other day, and I saw an Oregon Trail card game. I was like, no way, they made it to a card game? That's awesome.
You remember Oregon Trail, though?
Yeah, of course.
Essentially, Mass Effect Andromeda is let's go play farmer, and by the way, we're also carrying guns. Yep. And we showed up in a galaxy completely unprepared.
And now we're the aliens.
And we're the aliens, and then it's sort of like, well, who cares whether they make it or not? I mean, it's important to them, I suppose, but that's the problem with the story.
Yeah, and they don't do a good job of making you care about the characters. I mean, at the start when they started to play out the narrative, I was like, okay, this seems pretty cool. But then it got boring really fast. And the first, 3 hours of the game are just a serious slug through, tutorials and just talking and talking and talking, and it's just not interesting.
Oh, there is going to be no replay value in this game whatsoever. I replayed the first 3 Mass Effect games at least twice each. Mass Effect 2, I probably have 4 playthroughs on.
Yep, same here. I did full Paragon, full Renegade, mixed character, just gay character. It's like you got to do them all.
There is no possibility that I will be doing Andromeda twice because too much of it. The planets are interesting to explore. The missions are interesting once. I would never want to go explore and unlock those monoliths twice.
Yeah.
The only way I would play through it twice is if the game recognized that you'd beat it already and certain exploration and tutorial elements were pre-unlocked for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember in Mass Effect 3 how on your second playthrough it went ahead and gave you all the skills and the abilities, and it gave you the credits from day one?
Uh-huh. Yep.
So.
Okay. This next game that we got to talk about is actually one that I really like. I've been thoroughly addicted to PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is in early access right now. I did a video on it when it first came out, like almost a little mini review, which I almost never do, which should really tell you how much I like the game, that I actually thought to tell people about what I thought about this game. And now it's sold over 1 million copies in its first 16 days on early access. They regularly have 80 to 100,000 active players on Steam. It's the second most popular Battle Royale game right behind H1Z1 King of the Kill. And I think it's closing fast on that one and everything. I think as soon as this game gets more polished and more people are going to come on, because I think this has a lot of potential. I've been playing with my friends, and it's addicting. I don't know if you've had a chance to play it, but it is awesome.
Somebody mentioned this the other day in one of my in the comments. Somebody said, "Hey, how come are you going to test Ryzen on PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds?" And no, I've not played it. But then again, keep in mind I haven't played King of the Hill either, so maybe I'm not hip.
It's okay, man. It's still it's early access. I did talk about performance on it a little bit, but it still has a ways to go. They have another performance patch planned for this month. Just the other day, they patched some audio issues that there was it was difficult to hear players from just a few feet away, or even hearing doors open and closed. And they've made some good patches on that. They fixed the issue with the parachutes. So the developer has been very active in the community, taking feedback and everything. So it's great. It's great to see that. And he basically invented this genre. He worked on mods for Arma, DayZ, got hired on to do the Battle Royale mode for King of the Kill, and now he's working on his own game for that with Bluehole Studio. So it's just pure passion behind the project, and you could feel it when you play the game.
And that's awesome. And you need developers that engage with the community and that listen to. It's a fine line, I'm sure, between listening to the community and listening to every individual person, because you'd be running back and forth if you did. But I cringe a bit when I see that 1 million copies of a game were sold for real money in essentially beta access. The benefit to early access sales is that it lets people who don't have the money to fund a game do a game. The downside is anybody keeping track of how many games get started, sell copies in early access, and are never finished?
Yeah, that is definitely a concern. I completely agree with that. There's been a lot of issues with Steam's early access program, and unfortunately, it seems more often than not that is kind of the way it goes, where games might get incomplete or they never really achieve the goals that people thought they would hit. But it's nice to see when a game does come along like this and you could play it. Like, there's one game I would consider to be in that category would be Rust. It's gotten a ton of patches over time, but the game has been in early access for like 2 or 3 years, and it's still not anywhere near completion. And that's one I've kind of moved on from, because I got bored waiting for them to finish the game. Whereas this feels playable right now. It's got some bugs and things, and they're polishing it, but it still feels very enjoyable right now how it is.
Well, all I can say is that if they can sell 1 million copies of a game that isn't finished, the business side of me says, hey, more power to them. That's awesome. My only concern is that they go through that money without finishing it, and then the only way to keep working on it is to either sell it or, I don't know. Just I would say the same thing with G2A. I would say buyer beware. If you buy a game that isn't finished, are you okay with the fact that what you're getting might be all you ever have?
Yep. Justice 2036 wants me to greet you for him, so you are greeted.
Hello.
Hello, Justice. Okay, I think we got one more piece of gaming news, and then we're going to get back into a couple of hardware stories before we get out of here. This is regarding Quake Champions, which is from id Software. It's going to be a free-to-play game, which I was disappointed when I heard that, just because most free-to-play games I play are disappointing. And they're going to have battle packs and things like that, but they're saying it's going to be all cosmetic, except there will be the champions in the game. You will have to pay money for it to unlock them, or probably grind over really long periods of time to get them, just like in Rainbow Six Siege if you don't buy the season passes, which isn't too bad in that game, but we'll have to see what they do with Quake Champions. I could be wrong. That might be a perfect free-to-play model for all I know. But I'm looking forward to this game. I love, original Quake, Quake 2, Quake Arena, all of that. And it looks like it is now working on adding in Vulkan support to the title, which is great because that was awesome in Doom. That was just such a really good implementation of that. So if they're working on the same engine with id Tech 6 and they are able to implement Vulkan and get better performance, then I just think that's better for everyone. We need more Vulkan titles, in my opinion.
Yes, but do we need more free-to-play titles?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think free-to-play titles can have a place, but I would really just much rather pay them for it. I would like Overwatch. I would much rather pay $50 for the vanilla game of Overwatch and get the full package. Much prefer that to have all of the heroes unlocked. Imagine if, Overwatch was a free-to-play and you only started off with 2 characters and you had to grind like 30 to 50 hours of gameplay to get enough points to unlock each one, or go pay $5-10 for them. I'd rather just pay $50 for the game.
Don't look at me. I only play Diva.
I play a bit of everyone. I usually will adapt based on the map and what my team picks. I like Mei. Mei is pretty good. So,
May's very popular, and Mei is very mean to Diva because Diva's shields don't work against May's frost thingy.
I honestly, I like playing as Mei just because I almost consider her a troll character because she annoys everyone, and that's why I like playing her, because she just pisses everyone off. And they make everyone change up their game and like run away. So that's why I just like mixing it up. But often I'll pick count. I usually pick counters to what the other team is playing. That's usually the best way to go.
That's what's great about Overwatch, and actually I'm glad that they made it so that everybody playing has all the characters, because if you're in a match, and the fact that you can change champions during the match when you die or cycle means that if you find that you have the wrong mix, the way to win in that game is to have your team adapt and change up your champions, because if you're like assaulting an objective and the other side has got a defense set up with just a certain number of characters, usually with a Reinhardt and whatever not, if you alter your disposition to counter that, you can usually overcome it. It's the teams that won't change the characters they're playing.
That's the frustrating part, is when you're like in the chat and you're like, can someone please switch to to a soldier, because we need to counter that Pharah. She's destroying us right now. We need to counter to Pharah. We need a soldier. We need a McCree, something to counter Pharah, and people just don't switch. Or they pick like maybe a sniper and they're not doing too good as a sniper, and just like, you need to change it up. And that's what it gets frustrating when they don't.
Although I might be one of those people, because here's the thing. Occasionally I've tried playing as other characters, but I suck as everybody else because I don't play it enough to get good at the other characters. And so, do you want me playing the one character that I'm really good at? Or do you want me to try to play as a healer when I'm not a good healer?
Yep. You definitely get into those situations as well, though. It just tends to be frustrating when people won't vocalize that and they just kind of sit there and ignore you.
Well, I would make the suggestion that I would like to see an option in the queue that you could pick who you want to play before the queue starts and let Matchmaker build balanced teams so that each side has a healer, for example, each side has a tank.
Or they auto-balance based on who you main as and who you're best as on your play history. Like if they see you're an excellent, healer, maybe they'll put you with other people that are excellent offensive and defensive players, and not just a whole team of people that want to play Mercy.
Yeah. Quake Champions, good luck.
Yeah, I will look forward to playing it. Hopefully they do the free-to-play model right.
And I agree with you, by the way, on the optimizations. You mentioned Doom before. Doom was extremely well optimized, and that's how games should get released. Good, fast engine, playable on a wide variety of hardware. Yeah, Doom has the nightmare detail levels, but the reality is if you put Doom on high detail, it plays on a lot of different hardware.
Oh man, you put that on an RX 480 with Vulkan, and you could play that game 1440p over 100 FPS without breaking a sweat.
Right, but
runs
even on a
beautiful.
460, on a $100 card, if you are okay with 1080p at medium or high detail, it's still playable.
Yeah.
But that's what I like, is I like the fact that it's optimized enough it'll play on high-end hardware and it'll play on low-end hardware.
Yep. For sure.
Not everybody, because I mean, I respect that not everybody has the money for the best stuff, and everybody should still be able to have fun.
But tell me, how many people do you think are going to have money for the trailer park of monitors, this double wide display from Samsung? No, I'm just kidding. When I saw double wide, I just started thinking of trailers. So I was just like, puns.
I don't want to offend anybody from Alabama, but are we in Alabama now?
Hey, I lived in an apartment down in Florida surrounded by a lot of trailers. Nothing wrong with trailers. Some of them are actually gorgeous inside. I knew someone with a triple wide, and inside it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. But yeah, so Samsung is going to be coming out with a double wide 32:9 display, which is 3840 by 1080, which is an interesting choice. I think the market is going to be fairly limited for this, and I think it would be limited even more by people that are going to want to pay for this to have a 1080 display that wide, 49 inches.
It's not enough vertical pixels.
I agree. That's also the other thing is, for that width it needs more vertical pixels, and I think it needs to be at least 1440 for me to be interested in a display like that, and even higher than that possibly, like 4K Ultrawide is something I'm waiting for. I got one that's 3840 by 1600, beautiful for a 38-inch screen. For a 49-inch screen, I think you're going to need more than 1080p and more vertical pixels, like you said.
Well, regardless of the physical size of the screen, I find 1080p limiting just from the standpoint of what I can see on the screen with web browsers and title bars and...
Absolutely. It's too small. It's just too small. It's not enough screen real estate.
1440p is just about the right resolution in terms of not just the size of the items relative to you, because that's screen size dependent. The larger screen you have, the bigger stuff is. I'm more referring to what percentage of my screen real estate is taken up by my title bars and my toolbar on the bottom.
Yep, I agree. And having like a 27-inch 1440p display is like the perfect PPI for that, in my opinion. It's perfect. And then for 4K, it's like 32 and 40 inches. So when you're talking about a screen that's 49 inches, 1080p, like things are going to look massive. It looks silly. So I don't know how many people are going to go out and buy these, though. And I don't think we have pricing yet on this either.
The other comment that I would like to make is take a look at the base. They use that same base on their cheaper monitors, and with all due respect to Samsung, they can do better than that.
Yeah, I think it doesn't look like that's going to have tilt, swivel, pivot.
It doesn't look like a very sturdy base. I reviewed a 28-inch or 27-inch, I forget which, I think 27-inch Samsung 4K monitor last year, and it had that base. And what I discovered was that because it's longer in the front and shorter in the back, the whole monitor, if you just tap the corner of it, the whole monitor would rock.
Oh yeah, I've had some crane monitors like that before.
If you're gonna make a nice, now look, if you're selling a $100 or $150 monitor, fine. But when you're selling a $400, $500, $600 monitor, put a good solid base on it so that and if I tap my desk, the monitor should not move.
No, it shouldn't. Yeah, that's just cheap when they do that.
And yeah, if you're, and this monitor is obviously going to be expensive. I mean,
yeah, it's got to be at least $1,000.
If it's $1,000, it should have height adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this monitor is not going to have pivot, of course, but it should at least have tilt, swivel, and height.
Yeah, that's one of the things I found on ultra-wide monitors to be most necessary is having a tilt functionality, because I can't tell you how many ultra-wide displays I've seen that are crooked. They come out of the box, they don't have tilt, and they're a little bit off. They're not perfectly level, and it's extremely disconcerting when you're looking at an ultra-wide display. So they need to have that tilt. Even if they don't intend to people to be able to turn it on 90 degrees, you should be able to, or I should say the pivot, I should say. That's the pivot, right? Yeah, pivot.
They should at least have a little bit of pivot.
Yeah, they should. Give us like 10, 20 degrees of pivot so we can at least level it.
And especially also consider that not all desks are level.
Yeah.
Some desks sag in the middle, and you may not have the monitor exactly in the middle, and so the monitor may be off because of the surface it's on, and so giving you the ability to adjust by, again, if it's $100, $200 monitor, I understand, but if you're buying a $600, $700 34-inch ultra wide, those should have full adjustment.
Everything, yeah. If I'm seeing a monitor over $500, I want tilt, pivot, swivel, height adjust, all of them. There's no excuse not to, because you can go out and buy, monitor stands. Who is that makes it? Nixius. They make a monitor arm that has all the stuff you would expect to see on a high-end gaming monitor, and it just works, but it has a VESA mount on the back. So if you get like a cheap monitor and you want to have all that stuff, you can go buy a monitor arm from them. It's just a regular monitor stand without having to, bolt into the desk or anything.
What is your opinion, and you don't really have an article of this, but since we're talking about monitors, what is your opinion of refresh rates over 60 hertz?
I am a huge advocate for high refresh rate. I don't really like gaming at 60 hertz anymore. I've been on 144 hertz for close to 4 years now. So 1440p 144 hertz for me right now is the perfect sweet spot for gaming.
You don't find 1440p at 144 hertz hard to drive with graphics?
Well, sure, that's why I buy 1080s, and I would have bought a 1080 Ti if I didn't get sent one. But yeah, it's hard to drive, but I don't need a solid 144 FPS. I'm not anal about it like that. As long as I get over 60 FPS, I'm happy. I look at 60 FPS as the minimum for me, not the max. Is
your monitor G-Sync?
Yes. That's another thing that I need to have is some type of adaptive sync technology, whether it be G-Sync or FreeSync. At this setup, I have the Acer XB270HU, which is 1440, 144 Hz G-Sync, IPS, all that. And then at my other setup, I have a Korean monitor that is FreeSync with the same exact specs and actually uses the same panel as this monitor here. But this monitor was $800 when I got it. The Pixio PX277 is $400. But the display and everything is identical. It's got a cheaper stand, but it's 1440, 144 hertz, FreeSync, 4 millisecond response time, IPS, all that good stuff. It's a good deal, you might say. You should definitely check it out if you haven't. They're awesome. I could put you in touch with them.
Yeah. The thing is, I asked the question about high refresh rate. I generally have tended to go for higher resolution. All of my main monitors are 4K monitors, and at the moment, 4K, the only real option is 60 hertz. There's no, at least that I know of, 4K high refresh rate monitors. And I do see people asking about it. I'm torn in that regard because the problem is when you go up there, as you say, you've got to have so much graphics performance, and it becomes like a challenge of high resolution, high refresh rate, more graphics, expensive monitor, expensive graphics card. Now, I mean, how much does it cost to do that? That's a lot of money.
Well, I think you can get by on a 1440, 144 hertz display just fine with like a 1070 or a 980 Ti if you're willing to play games at high settings. And then with like a 1070, even though you can play Ultra on most titles, they're only going to be really unoptimized games where you're not going to be able to do that. But yeah, it's really not an issue. And like I said, really 60 is just the minimum for me. I don't need to hit 144 all the time. I think if people kind of focus on that and think they need to be getting a solid 144 FPS, then they're going to be disappointed often. So and if you got G-Sync or FreeSync, then you're going to be fine anyway. So you won't notice those variables. And then also, even if you don't have G-Sync or FreeSync, having 144 hertz is still nice because you can just run V-Sync off. So you don't have to worry about getting your frame rate cut in half if you have V-Sync on, which would be down to 72 FPS, which would still give you a pretty big lag spike. because if you're not hitting the 144 all the time anyway, if you're on a lower power GPU, then you're not going to have to worry about screen tearing from going over 144 FPS. So even if you don't have G-Sync or FreeSync, as long as you're getting, in between 60 and 144, you're going to be absolutely fine. You're going to get a very smooth experience, very little input lag because you're not having to put anything on. So that's been my experience, at least 144 Hz, 1440p, and I love it.
Awesome.
Yep, it's great. Okay, so we've got a couple things here on the RX 500 series. We don't know exactly when these are going to be available, but it looks like it might be pretty soon because we're starting to see aftermarket cards surface from companies like XFX, PowerColor, Asus. I know you were saying you have an Asus 470 there, which looks actually identical to the RX 570 that they've got here pictured on video cards.
This is the Republic of Gamers RX 470, and I just grabbed this because I knew that you were going to be showing these pictures here. There's a picture of the retail box of an RX 570, which I can only assume is real and not photoshopped. But assuming it's real, it looks like exactly the same cooler.
Well, it doesn't really surprise me that they're refreshing the coolers, considering I look at this entire lineup as a refresh. Someone said it earlier in the chat. They called it AMD Rebrandion. Rebrandion. No, that was it. Rebrandion. That's a good one.
What's interesting is now that I sit here and look at this, hopefully you've got the link in chat, and if not, you can put it in there. I'm looking at the picture on the article that you sent me of the RX 570
Asus card. Yeah, I've got it up here, and it is in the description if people want to follow along.
One thing that I'm looking at on the picture is the distance in metal between here and here is different on the one in the picture of the 570 than it is on this 470. It actually looks like the plate and the card may be slightly different. It looks like the cooler's the same.
Maybe a difference. The PCB has changed possibly, or the placement of the bracket.
Well, either the bracket or it's hard to tell. But just looking at this, it's a little bit. It's the bracket here is different. So
yeah, and you could see that if you look on the next slide also with the Fudzilla page with the Devil card, and you scroll down to the bottom, they have the card opened up. And you could see there is a decent amount of overhang for the PCB above where the bracket ends. So that just may be the case of these PCBs being a little bit wider on some of the custom cards.
For anybody saying, you talk about refreshes. Both AMD and NVIDIA have done refreshes. Let's be honest. What has Intel done for 6 years with CPUs?
They've just refreshed everything. They just refresh. They're going to be refreshing again in June, apparently.
KB Lake is just a refresh of Sandy Bridge, quite frankly. Let me offer a thought to everybody watching right now. All this means is that the 400 series are going to be a deal. And right now, there is a RX 480 4GB card for $149 on Newegg after mail-in rebate, and I hate mail-in rebates. Seriously, I wish those things would go away. Oh my God, I hate mail-in rebates. But
I agree. I've never mailed one in.
No, I don't bother. I just assume that the price you pay is the price. But look, if you're okay to do it, $150 after mail-in rebate on an RX 480. Now it's a blower style, but I own a blower style RX 480 and it's quiet. I don't have any noise issues with it. That's a deal. That is crazy good performance for the money. So if all this means is that the 400 series becomes cheaper, go get one while you can.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be. And just by the way, every time you say deal, I get a warm fuzzy feeling inside. Just it makes me happy when I hear you say deals. I think everyone in the chat probably feels the same way. You could let us know. So
it's a deal.
there it is again. I feel so good about myself now. But yeah, the 500 series, it's probably not too exciting for many people, but unless you didn't pick up a 400 series card, then maybe it'll be for you. Or like you said, you can get a good deal on those 400 cards. Maybe people looking to sell those, but I'll still be waiting for Vega. And my God, that heatsink on that Red Devil card is ridiculous. That is huge. That is a deep, deep card.
Well, you mentioned Vega, and a lot of people are waiting Vega, and actually beneath the Red Devil, there's a comment in the comment section of Fudzilla, where somebody said, so while waiting for Vega, we've had AMD release a full line of cards and then a refresh line of cards. That is so. It's like, yeah. Then the next person says, so when's Vega coming?
Yeah, they get an upvote for that. That was worth it.
Yeah, it's Vega is coming. We don't know when Vega's coming. AMD has not said when Vega's coming, but they're obviously working on it. AMD has announced it's coming. They've said it's going to be called Vega. Hopefully, it's awesome. AMD has unfortunately not had a high-end card for a while now. The RX 480, let's be honest, is no competition for a 1070 or 1080. But that being said, what's the volume in graphics cards? Is it 1070 and 1080s, or is it $150 cards? So, the vast majority of cards sold are not $500 graphics cards.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see how performance is, but from everything that I've seen, it looks like just a little bit faster, better efficiency, and higher clock speeds over the 400 series. Which probably won't be all that different what's going on with Intel X299, which it appears Intel is rushing out to release now in June.
I wonder why.
Yeah, it was initially supposed to release in early August, and now it's looking like it's going to be between May 29th and June 4th, according to rumors from a Chinese website called Bench.life, which are always a good source of Intel leaks, usually pretty accurate. And this is called their Basin Falls series. And it's going to be a new series for X299. So for enthusiasts, which is probably going to be targeting Ryzen, which is what I'm sure you were alluding to there. So yeah, it seems like that would be the reason why they would rush it out, to get it out as soon as possible, so they have an answer for Ryzen immediately. Let's just see if they do the right thing on the pricing. That's going to be the big thing. I mean, if they come out with another Deca core and charge $2,000 for it, then what's the point for a 2% IPC gain?
They have an answer for Ryzen right now, and I said this when Ryzen 7 launched. I said, when I did my Ryzen 7 video, I said something along the lines of, look, a year ago when Skylake launched, and I did my Skylake overview video, I basically said in that video, if you're looking for performance, it's Intel. There's nothing else to consider. Now I'm recommending AMD. I'm not an Intel fanboy. I'm not an AMD fanboy. I'm a deal fanboy. I will recommend whichever company gives me the best deal. And I said when Ryzen 7 launched, if they cut the price of Broadwell E in half tomorrow, if suddenly a 6800K was $250, I would be shouting from the rooftops to go buy it. Intel has a response to Ryzen. Lower the price of Broadwell E. As long as the 6800K is $400 and the motherboards are $200, there's nothing to consider.
Yeah, there's no reason to buy them. It doesn't come down to performance, because Intel's already beating them in performance in many ways, but not in the price department. They do not. Their pricing does not line up with AMD's, and that's why we're comparing 8-core 16-threaded CPUs to 6-core 6-threaded Intel processors, because that's where they line up in terms of price. Not necessarily, because they don't line up with the performance of, it all comes down to the price.
I mentioned this before. This is about $240 at the moment for a 7600K. I don't recommend it at that price. You should buy a Ryzen 5 1600. But if Intel dropped the price of this tomorrow to, say, $179 or $159, I'd change my tune.
Yep.
So they have an answer. It's called price.
Yeah, and Dribs asked, he said, side tangent, has Ryzen 5 been as smooth as Ryzen 7 in terms of gameplay? It's been extremely smooth. I loaded that up initially with the 1080 Ti, and I started playing some like GTA 5, and I was like, this is just buttery smooth. I mean, it might be getting less frames than an overclocked i7 to 5 gigahertz, but the gameplay is silky smooth. Level 1 Techs, they just actually put up a video, I think it was today, where they did a double-blind test with Ryzen to see if they could tell the difference with which was smoother. Very interesting video. You guys should check that out. But yeah, it's been very smooth. Sorry, you gonna say?
All I was gonna say is, unless you are at the top 1% of gaming, unless you want that 150 frames per second, unless you just absolutely have to have the best frame rate, minimums and 1% frame rates are in many regards more important than the top end. Because take the worst example for AMD, Grand Theft Auto 5. Grand Theft Auto 5 on this overclocked to 4.7 averaged 145 frames per second on the RX 480 at 1080p high, whereas the R5 1600 was 121 frames a second. So there was 24 frames per second more.
Which tells people the i5 is faster, but it doesn't matter as regards to the minimums.
Look at the minimums. The minimums on Ryzen 5 were much better. It was smoother. It's 121 versus 145. Who cares?
Yeah, very, very few people. I mean, there are people that like to. I think it's just. I think it's a rather polarizing, thing. Is people just really want to split hairs and just have the win. They want to say, "Oh, this is better than this. Therefore, AMD wins, and I chose the right side," or "I chose Intel, so I chose the right side, and I'm better than you." That's really what it is. It's a big.
Intel did not become bad just because Ryzen came out. If you own an Intel chip, don't feel bad.
No,
they're still great processors. There's nothing wrong with them. I mean, enjoy it, love it, use it. This is not a Intel is bad because Ryzen came out. This is just if you're looking for what gives you the most total performance for the money, that's it.
Yep. Yeah, Ryzen is without a doubt the price to performance champion. And that's what AMD has always been good at. AMD has always been that company where you go and you get fairly comparable performance for a better price. And they haven't done anything different here this time.
Well, back to your topic on Skylake X and putting aside KB Lake X for a minute, which I still don't understand what the point of is. What do you think of the... Now, in fairness, there is an advantage still to Skylake X in the fact that it has up to 44 PCI Express lanes and 4-channel RAM as opposed to 2-channel RAM. What's your opinion of those?
Between dual channel and quad channel?
Yeah.
I haven't really noticed too much of a difference between them. If I have the same RAM count, it's pretty much the same.
You have a 6800K, don't you?
Yeah, I have a 6800K running with 8 4-gig DIMMs.
Do you notice that the quad channel makes much of a difference?
I can't notice anything. Nothing. I've never had it. I've never really looked at it in minute detail, but I can't really notice anything different at all.
What about the possibility of more PCI Express lanes? Do you think that matters?
Doesn't matter to me. It doesn't really matter unless you're planning on running SLI and still want to have room for extra expansion cards. And even with SLI, you're going to be absolutely fine. Even if you get like one of the one with fewer lanes where you're not going to get the full X16 because you don't need that. X8 is absolutely fine. So yeah, unless you're doing multiple cards SLI, or if you were doing 4-way SLI, which isn't even really supported anymore on newer cards, you really don't need like 40 PCI lanes, 44 PCI lanes.
So do you think Intel's going to make this Skylake X any cheaper than Broadwell E was?
No, not at all. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I don't think they're going to come anywhere near close to what AMD is doing with Ryzen for that level of performance.
$1,750 for 10 cores?
Think they'll do that again?
Let me put it this way. They could cut that price in half and I would still struggle to see any point.
Yep.
AMD is offering 8 real cores, 16 threads with SMT for $320.
Yeah, the 1700 is a steal. It's a deal, one might even say.
I mean, for less than the cost of a 4-core 8-thread chip, the 7700K, they're offering 816. Yes, no, it's not as fast in the top end max gaming performance, but oh my goodness, I I tweeted about this the other day. I was rendering a 4K video to upload to YouTube in Adobe Premiere Pro or Adobe Media Encoder, and I was playing Mass Effect Andromeda. I went into Task Manager and just for smoothness reasons, I set the first 4 cores to Mass Effect and the second 4 cores to Adobe Media Encoder. And the video took a little longer to encode, but I wasn't in a rush. It was no big deal. And the game experienced 0 performance penalty. Instead of having to have 2 computers, a render machine and a gaming machine, I can now game and render videos at the same time with 8 cores. You couldn't do that on a 7700K.
Yeah, and this is making, I also think that it's going to help to make a whole new generation of content creators out there that couldn't afford those high-end processors before. It's making it more affordable. You'll be able to do rendering faster. You'll be able to run VMs. I mean, the applications you could think to use for having a 16-threaded part for $320 is pretty much endless.
And even if you don't go buy an 8-core chip, here's the other advantage. The people who buy 6 and 8-core chips will increase the percentage of the market that own these. As the percentage of people who have high core count chips grows, developers will start to use them more, and this will benefit everybody, even if you're on a 4-core, 8-thread chip.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
So what's the point of Kaby Lake X then?
I don't know. For Intel to think that they have an answer to Ryzen when they don't, unless they're going to cut the prices by half or even more.
It's only going to be 4 cores. For anybody who's watching this not looking at the linked article, Kaby Lake X is going to be a 112-watt TDP part, 4 cores, 8 threads, only up to 16 lanes, but it's going to be on the new LGA 2066 platform. So it's using the high-end enthusiast platform, yet it's the same core count and the same turbo speed of Kaby Lake for the base platform.
But just like those Xeons we talked about with Wendell, that means you get 4K Netflix support on Microsoft Edge. So that's why you spend $1,800 for this. That's why. Because everyone wants 4K Netflix in Microsoft Edge. Because everyone uses Microsoft Edge. first taskbar icon I delete after. Microsoft Edge is the first taskbar icon I remove after installing Windows 10.
Oh, my favorite is opening Chrome, and then Microsoft Edge comes up and says, "Do you know that Microsoft Edge is 13% faster?"
The only thing I use Microsoft Edge for is to download Firefox. That's it. I download Firefox, and then I'm just like, yeah, that's the first thing I do. And then I'm just like, all right, now I got Firefox. Let me go grab my 9-night and get on with my day. And get rid of all this other telemetry.
The only other comment I want to make about X299 and the upcoming Skylake X platform is that if Intel is pushing up the launch in response to Ryzen, they may have the same issues with early BIOSes and motherboards in that Skylake X will have to have been in development for the past year. This stuff isn't developed in a few months. They already have working Skylake X CPUs. They have to for development and validation reasons.
Yeah.
So for them to push up the launch by potentially 2 months, they're cutting into their QA and development time. They aren't somehow magically making the chips faster. These processors generally run in 2 to 4 year development cycles. I mean, what they're going to release in 2018 is already probably being taped out in R&D labs manually at the moment. I mean, they have all this stuff worked on. So be in mind that if you're thinking, I want Intel and I want X299, and you buy it on launch day, don't be surprised if you have 5 BIOS revisions in the first 2 months. That's all I'm saying.
Yep, for sure. Okay, well that was our last topic. We were coming up on 7 o'clock, so gonna end the show now and get on out of here. But if you guys missed the start of the show, you missed the giveaway. That's going to be linked down below between Tech Deals myself and Level 1 Techs, and also links over to Tech Deals channel. If you aren't already subscribed to him, go get subscribed to him, and get all the deals, all those juicy deals.
Thank you so much for having me, Joker.
Yeah, no problem, man. Hopefully we'll have you back again very soon in the near future. But we'll catch you guys next time. Ta-ra.